and welcome to this week's video. In this week's video we're going to look at a subject matter that sometimes can be a bit scary, and that is something that's transparent. What I'm wanting you to do is start with something that's very simple in terms of its transparency, and that is a plain glass that you would drink out of. Try not to use one that's faceted or that has a lot of detail to it. The plainer the glass is, the better. In this week's exercise, I'm going to use gouache, so I'm using colour again. So it's a nice little jumping off point from where we were looking last week. But it is also an exercise that you could do just in pencil as well. Concentrating on the shapes as I will describe them and the tones of those shapes. The other big aspect of this week's exercise is starting with big masses, not with the detail. And this is a very effective way of getting down that feeling of transparency and that feeling of glass. One thing that I think is a good idea, particularly for this week's exercise, is to cut yourself out a little bit of card like this with a 1/4 inch hole in it. Now this 1/4 inch hole is a way of isolating tones and colours when you look through it. So you look through it and hold it out against the object and look at a certain area within that cut out circle and analyse it in terms of its hue, its saturation, and its tone. And they're the 3 aspects that we're going to concentrate the most on this week. Forget a little bit about temperature, don't worry about it. I'm setting you a set range of colours to use, and I want you to think about the hue that you're looking at, the tone that you're looking at, and the saturation that you're looking at, so that when you look through that little hole and look at the colour that you're seeing, you're going to ask yourself what colour, what hue it is. Is it a red, a yellow, a green, a blue-green, a red-violet, etc., etc.? Is it light or dark? And is it bright, or is it saturated, or is it desaturated? So you can be looking through that little hole and saying, there I'm seeing an orange that's light in tone and it's desaturated. They're the kind of questions that you'll be asking yourself as you work through this exercise. As I said before, you're going to work with a set range of colours if you are working in colour. And they are cadmium red light, or something similar to that. Sometimes cad scarlet is something appropriate too. Alizarin crimson. Cadmium orange, again a colour you may or may not have, but if you do have it, it would be useful. Cadmium yellow light, or cadmium yellow pale is another name that you might use or see. Something though that's just bordering on being a little bit lemony in terms of its yellow, in terms of the yellow. Viridian green, or another green that's very similar, is phthalo green. Prussian blue, or phthalo blue if you don't have Prussian. And the last one is ultramarine blue. You will also need white. With that limited range of colours, you should be able to very easily do this exercise. Here is how I'd like you to set up the glass of water. Here you can see my shadow box, and I have lined the right hand wall with red paper, the left hand wall with green, and the floor with blue. I've then half filled my glass of water and pushed it into the corner of the shadow box. I have lit it from above and slightly in front so that there's no clear cast shadow. I really can't see the cast shadow. And I'm positioning myself looking right into the corner of the box so that half the glass is green and half the glass is red, and that I'm looking slightly down onto it as well. The first part of the exercise is to look for the major masses, each part. So working from the colours of the box is that we have got one colour, try and just choose a colour for the red wall, a colour, a general colour for the green wall, a colour for or 4 parts to above the water in the glass. So you'll see that there's part of the glass where you're looking through just one layer, and then parts of the glass that you're looking through 2 layers of water. A colour for the surface of the water. Then below that surface of the water you will find the 3 parts of the red, green and blue. Then look for a colour there around the base of the glass, and then of course a colour for the blue base, the surface that the cup or the glass is sitting on. Use the viewfinder, that little dot finder that I showed you earlier, to identify each part that you're looking at here. So as I've divided it into those little parts, look for a part that is the general part or the general colour of that area, and identify and analyse it looking it through that little hole in the piece of cardboard. When you were looking before and analysing each part, you will have noticed that there were slight variations in the red of the wall, the green of the wall, the blue of the ground. Within the surface of the water there might have been slight variations. In this second stage, that is where you now take each of those parts that you've identified before and introduce any differences that you can see within those parts. Try not to break them up into too many parts. Here you can see in the example that I've done is that the wall I've divided it into now 2 tones. The surface of the water I've introduced maybe another couple of colours and another couple of tones, but I haven't overly broken it up. The more simple you can keep these stages, the better the end result will be. And then go for the final statements. These are those little sparkling details, some of those highlights, those darks, refinements of some of the shapes that you could do, that finish off what you're seeing. Again, don't go overboard in absolute minute detail. Keep with them as broader elements as you can. But these will then introduce that final element that finishes off the picture. I do apologise. I have done terrible ellipses in this example, and not a good example of good observation of ellipses, but I could do better. If you want to extend yourself with this exercise, another version that you could do is colour the water. So all I've done here is that I've used tea and coloured the water. You could use a juice or something, so you still want it to be somewhat transparent so that you're observing how the colour of the coloured water affects the colours as you see them through the glass. And then proceed in the same way, painting each part as an element, almost like a jigsaw puzzle. That you can see here as this body of photos of this exercise. You can see each part and each minute change that I make from stage to stage develops and finishes towards the final picture. Good luck. I look forward to seeing how you go with this exercise. Enjoy it, relax, and I will see you again soon in Zoom.